Rico and Jax Mulvey arrived in Dublin with confidence, cash, and a deadly new product, believing they could carve out a kingdom on foreign streets. But what they didn't know was that Cillian Rogan, the silent ruler of Ireland's criminal underworld, had been watching from the shadows, ready to defend his empire with blood, fire, and fear. Rico Mulvey stood at the edge of Dublin port, watching the crates get unloaded from the ferry. The salty wind hit his face as he lit a cigarette, unfazed by the rain that had just started falling. His younger brother, Jackson, known to most as Jax, leaned against a black BMW with English plates. They had arrived from Liverpool only days earlier, not for a holiday, not for family, but to claim territory. The Mulvey brothers weren't known for patience. They made their name in Merseyside running high-level drug operations, building their empire off the back of synthetic highs and street-level foot soldiers. Now, their ambition had grown teeth, and Ireland was the next prize. They came prepared. 2 safe houses rented under fake names, one in Clondalkin and the other in Swords, burner phones, unregistered weapons, and 2 new runners already recruited through online gaming platforms. Disaffected Irish teenagers desperate for fast money. Their product was a new designer compound called Blue Fog, cheaper to make, more addictive than anything currently on the streets, and untraceable in most drug tests. The plan was simple: flood low-income areas with supply, undercut local prices, and force the smaller dealers into folding or joining. But what the Mulvey brothers didn't know was that they were walking into a well-guarded lion's den. For over a decade, the Rogan syndicate had quietly dominated the western and northern patches of Dublin. Their leader, Cillian Rogan, had survived stabbings, shootouts, and a police task force operation that had taken down 3 of his rivals. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy, but his grip on the city's drug trade was like frost on glass. Cold, silent, and hard to remove. Cillian operated with precision. His 2 trusted lieutenants, Marnie Keane and Donald Twomey, ran surveillance from a closed-up betting shop on the south side. The moment the Mulveys began distributing their product, Rogan's crew noticed. Not through rumors or turf alerts, but by tracking a sudden drop in demand from their own dealers. Someone new was stepping in, and they were stepping on toes that had been broken long ago in warning. Jax, unaware of the danger, started hosting quiet meetings with interested locals in dim pubs and car parks. Most said yes. The money was too good to ignore. Those who didn't were watched. The Rogan syndicate didn't need to make threats immediately. They preferred to let their enemies dig deep enough before burying them alive. One of the first red flags came when a van carrying a week's supply of Blue Fog was hijacked just outside Tallaght. The driver, a Londoner named Shane Harrow, was beaten and dumped in the canal. The only thing missing from the van was the drugs. Cash and phones were untouched. Rico suspected a rival gang, but Jax was quick to point fingers at local addicts. Neither considered the Rogan crew just yet. But the signs kept coming. A crowbar attack on one of their runners. A police tip-off that led to the seizure of €20,000 worth of pills. A street rumor that someone inside their crew was feeding information to the old ghosts. The nickname for Rogan's network. The Mulveys brushed it off, telling themselves that Ireland was behind the times and ripe for taking. Liverpool had been worse. Manchester had been bloodier. They didn't see that this fight wasn't going to be won with fear or speed. In Dublin, violence didn't come screaming. It crept in quiet and exact. And by the time the Mulvey brothers realized whose patch they were on, the game had already turned against them. They were strangers in the rain. And the city they came to conquer had already decided to push them back into the sea. Tensions thickened like smoke over the housing estates of West Dublin. The Mulvey brothers kept pushing their product with ruthless pace, ignoring every sign that they had crossed a line. Rico believed momentum was everything. He saw the surge in profit as proof that they were winning. Blue fog was moving faster than expected. Teenagers were hooked. Local dealers, scared or greedy, were switching sides. But they were blind to the growing silence. The usual noise of the streets had dulled. Conversations paused when their crew walked by. Loyalists were harder to find. Fear had shifted direction, and they didn't know it yet. The Rogan syndicate was no longer just watching. The first move was subtle. A trap house in Clondalkin was found burned to the ground early one morning. The Mulveys suspected junkies or a rival crew making noise. But there were no break-in signs, no stolen cash, no missing drugs. Only scorch marks, a melted lock, and a symbol spray painted on the charred wall, a crow with its wings clipped. That was Cillian Rogan's quiet signature. No one outside the Underworld understood it, but inside it meant the sky was closing in. Rico shrugged it off, but Jax was rattled. He started carrying a gun during pickups. He moved from the safe house to a hotel in Malahide. The sense of control they once felt was slipping. One of their closest muscle men, Tyson Kearns, was ambushed after leaving a nightclub near Temple Bar. He was found tied to a lamppost, his face swollen and unrecognizable, a single finger removed and left in his coat pocket. He survived, but he wouldn't speak. He left Ireland the same night and never came back. This wasn't a street gang causing chaos. This was structure. This was power in the shadows. The Rogan syndicate never needed to be loud. Cillian had built his empire on the idea that silence did more damage than shouting. His orders to Marnie Keane and Donald Twomey were clear. Apply pressure until the Mulveys broke themselves. Every movement was calculated. Every hit was clean. No bodies in the open. No trails to follow. Just whispers and warnings. The Mulveys attempted to strike back. They flew in a new enforcer from London. Cairo Dent, a thick-set brawler with prison ink and a reputation for stomping out problems. Cairo didn't believe in slow tactics. He walked into a local pub in Ballymun known to be a hangout for Rogan's people and left two men on the floor, one with a broken nose, the other missing teeth. The act was brutal, but it was also loud, and that noise traveled fast. It didn't take long for the Rogan crew to respond. Within 24 hours, a video surfaced online, private, encrypted, and sent directly to Rico's burner phone. It showed Cairo's rental car flipped and burning in a field. Drone footage captured by someone who wanted them to know how easily they were being followed. Cairo went into hiding the next day. The Mulveys started running out of loyal soldiers. But the worst betrayal came from inside. The brothers had been working with a young courier named Fintan Raid, a skinny 22-year-old who handled small runs between stash houses. Quiet and forgettable, Fintan was never seen as a threat. What the Mulveys didn't know was that Rogan had already turned him weeks ago. Cillian didn't need to outgun the Mulveys. He just needed to know where they were going before they got there. Fintan fed them false drop points. He delayed deliveries, redirected pickups, and even logged when Rico and Jax would leave their safe houses. With every piece of information, the Rogan syndicate grew tighter around them. The Mulveys were still moving product, but they were losing the streets. By the end of the second week, what had started as a bold takeover was crumbling under quiet pressure. They thought Dublin was a city to be conquered. But they were learning, painfully and slowly, that this place belonged to someone else. The decision to move west was born out of desperation, not strategy. After weeks of setbacks, the Mulvey brothers believed Dublin was too volatile. Rico convinced himself the heat would die down if they pulled back and restructured elsewhere. Jax wasn't so sure, but he followed his older brother, hoping Galway would offer a clean slate. It was smaller, quieter, less saturated. A new place meant less risk, or so they thought. What they didn't understand was that Cillian Rogan didn't operate within city lines. His influence ran wide, and Galway was no different. The operation started small. They set up in a rented semi-detached house in Dalfiska. It looked normal on the outside. Neatly trimmed hedges, a kid's bicycle left on the lawn next door. But inside, the house ran like a miniature factory. Pills were sorted, bagged, and moved across town using local contacts. One of those contacts was a 19-year-old girl named Orla Hanley. She had no criminal record and no priors, just a rebellious streak and a boyfriend deep in debt. She agreed to work small drops for Jax, believing it was quick money with little danger. Her role was simple: take product from house to hand off and keep her mouth shut. At first, everything ran smooth. Galway's addicts responded quickly to the new supply. The Mulveys didn't face the same immediate aggression they'd seen in Dublin. That sense of ease tricked them into believing they had outmaneuvered the Rogan syndicate. Rico began discussing future expansion into Limerick. Jack started recruiting more local couriers. But neither of them noticed that their messages were being intercepted. The safe house had been compromised almost from the start. Orla never made her third delivery. She left on foot from the drop house late one afternoon, wearing a gray hoodie and carrying a pouch with €5,000 worth of blue fog. She never arrived at her destination. Her phone was later found, placed on the hood of Rico's parked car, screen cracked, red smears across its surface. No body was ever found. No ransom call. Just absence. The police treated it as a missing persons case, but the Mulveys knew better. Jax wanted to leave that night. The loss of Orla wasn't just tragic. It was a message. Galway wasn't a loophole. It was a trap. Rico, however, refused to fold. His pride had taken too many hits. Instead of retreating, he reached for reinforcements. He made contact with a Scottish trafficker named Derek Deek Mullen, a Glasgow-based dealer with ties to Serbian suppliers. Deek was known for stepping in where others wouldn't. He had no loyalty, just a taste for war and profit. Deek agreed to lend men. 3 enforcers with military backgrounds, all armed and ready to push back. The Mulveys waited for their arrival with grim hope. Jax checked windows every hour. Rico stayed glued to burner phones, trying to locate leaks in their network. But while they waited, the trap closed tighter. When Deek's men arrived by ferry through Belfast, they found nothing waiting for them. No welcoming crew, no coordinates, not even a working number. The Galway safe house had been torched just hours earlier. Inside, fire crews found 2 bodies, badly burned, identities unconfirmed. In a nearby field, a plastic bag containing crushed pills and a scorched burner phone was left hanging from a barbed wire fence. No fingerprints, no names, no explanations. Deke withdrew immediately, cutting off all future support. His reputation had taken a hit by aligning with the Mulveys, and he wanted no more association. The Mulvey brothers were now isolated. With fewer men, fewer contacts, and no trust left. They thought they could outsmart Dublin's grip. They thought Galway was untouched ground. But they were wrong. Rogan didn't just protect his patch. He hunted anyone who dared touch it. And by now, the Mulveys weren't expanding. They were running. The city they once hoped to conquer had turned into a maze of traps and silence. Back in Dublin, whispers of the Mulveys' downfall had started to spread through the estates. With Orla Hanley missing, their Galway operation torched, and the Scottish backup retreating in shame, Rico and Jax found themselves stripped of power and paralyzed by fear. Each day brought more paranoia. Every phone call felt monitored. Every shadow looked like a warning. What remained of their crew started disappearing. Some fleeing back to England, others simply vanishing without a trace. Rico tried to maintain control, but he was unraveling. He no longer trusted anyone, not even Jax. Meetings were short, frantic. He jumped between safe houses, often staying no longer than a night. Jax, growing more anxious by the hour, urged him to pull out entirely. But Rico clung to his pride like a life raft. He couldn't walk away, not after all they'd invested. Not when the streets still echoed his name, even in fear. Cillian Rogan had been waiting for this moment. He knew that when outsiders came with noise and ambition, they burned fast. All he had to do was apply pressure until they started to tear each other apart. Fintan Raid, the courier-turned-informant, had continued feeding the Rogan syndicate every movement the brothers made. He marked drop points, logged addresses, and even recorded voice notes from inside cars. Rico and Jax never suspected him, too distracted by the chaos closing in. The final move began with a lie. Fintan told Rico he'd secured a large buyer in the Port Tunnel area, someone with connections in Cork looking to move serious weight. Desperate for a win, Rico agreed to the meeting. It was a cold, gray morning when he left alone in a rental car, unaware that he was driving straight into a setup. What happened next was never officially reported. There were no police sightings, no traffic cameras showing his arrival. Rico Mulvey simply disappeared. The car was found 3 days later, abandoned near the edge of a marshland in North County Dublin. The keys were still in the ignition. The only clue was a torn paper stuffed into the glove box, a delivery schedule for a shipment that never came. Jax went into a downward spiral. He refused to believe Rico was gone. For days, he called every number they had, even reaching out to old enemies in Liverpool. But no one had seen or heard from his brother. His calls went unanswered, his threats ignored. Then the final blow landed. A fake social media account began posting vague references to Rico's fate. Images of the marshland, cryptic captions, and a photo of a crow drawn in the dirt. Jax knew exactly who it came from. And he finally understood that this wasn't a temporary loss. It was the end. Jax tried to escape through Northern Ireland, planning to cross back into the UK and vanish. But he never made it. A joint operation between Gardaí and the PSNI intercepted him near Newry after an anonymous tip. Another quiet whisper from Rogan's network. He was extradited to Liverpool on outstanding trafficking charges. The arrest made local news, but there was no mention of Rico. Officially, he remained a missing person. Unofficially, everyone knew he was gone. The Mulvey crew disintegrated overnight. Their stash houses were raided. Their money vanished. Their dealers either flipped or disappeared. The name that once sparked fear in parts of Liverpool now drew smirks in the underworld. Rico had gambled on dominance. Instead, he walked straight into a machine built for slow, surgical erasure. Cillian Rogan never said a word publicly. He didn't need to. His empire had survived another invasion, and in doing so had expanded. The Mulveys had made him stronger. Their downfall was a warning carved into the memory of every dealer from the UK who considered stepping onto Irish soil. In the weeks following Jack Mulvey's arrest, a strange calm returned to Dublin streets. The areas once buzzing with tension, Clondalkin, Finglas, Ballymun, settled into a quiet rhythm. But for those paying attention, something had changed beneath the surface. The Rogan syndicate hadn't just defended their patch. They had solidified a message, etched into every broken deal and vanished dealer. Ireland wasn't open for business unless Cillian Rogan said so. There were no public celebrations, no violent outbursts or victory laps. Cillian didn't need theatrics. His network operated like a shadow, present in every estate, pub, and port, yet rarely seen. The fall of the Mulveys became part of the criminal folklore passed from one corner boy to the next. Their ambition, once admired, was now considered reckless. In places like Tallaght and Limerick, the phrase, "Don't do a Mulvey," became street slang for overstepping. Marnie Keane took over much of the day-to-day operations in Dublin. Her leadership style mirrored Rogan's, precise and ruthless. She replaced weak links with hardened lieutenants, ensured product flowed steadily but quietly, and kept loyalty tight. Donald Twomey expanded their laundering operations into construction sites and offshore accounts, disguising profits behind false invoices and shell companies. With no more interference from the Mulveys, the entire network became leaner and more profitable. As for Fintan Raid, the informant who'd helped orchestrate the Mulvey downfall, his usefulness had run its course. One evening, he failed to return home. His apartment was left untouched. His phone, wallet, and ID were all still inside. Neighbors said they saw him walking toward a parked car they didn't recognize. He was never seen again. There were no police appeals, no news articles, just another name whispered among those who understood that no one outlived Rogan's cleanup. In Liverpool, the Mulvey name carried a different weight now. Once feared as rising dealers with muscle, they were now mocked in underground circles. Their collapse became a cautionary tale retold in pubs and prison yards across Merseyside. Even Derek, Deke, Mullen, the Scottish trafficker who once aligned with them, found himself under pressure. Other UK gangs blamed him for backing a losing cause. His reputation took damage he couldn't afford, forcing him to retreat from Irish interests completely. But for all the silence surrounding Rico, Mulvey's disappearance, a few in the underworld still speculated. Some claimed his body had been dumped in a lake somewhere between Wicklow and Wexford, encased in concrete inside a stolen barrel. Others said he was sold out to a Balkan cartel that wanted revenge for a failed deal. No theory was confirmed, and that uncertainty was exactly how Cillian liked it. A death could be avenged. A ghost, on the other hand, kept fear alive. As for Jax, he sat in a UK prison cell, awaiting trial on multiple trafficking charges. He spoke to no one. Lawyers said he refused visitors. Some believed he was holding back information in exchange for protection. Others believed he was simply broken, haunted by the truth that his brother was gone, his empire destroyed, and his enemies untouchable. Either way, his silence served Rogan's cause. Cillian Rogan's face never appeared in any newspaper. There were no police photos, no surveillance captures, just the same old rumors. A man in a hoodie seen at a boxing gym, a quiet regular at a greyhound track, a faceless king operating from behind a curtain of fear and discipline. And in the underworlds of Ireland and the UK, that kind of invisibility meant power. The turf war was never a war. It was an extermination, a silent, precise removal of an outside threat. And when it was over, there was no need to rebuild, because the patch had never been lost. It had always belonged to the same man, the one no one ever saw but everyone knew.